Members, it's appointed time and we've got a quorum. Please return to your seats. So we are discussing FC R 2017-18-3. This is to ask the FC to endorse a recommendation made by the ESC on the 21st of February, and that is the paper EZ 2016-17-23, and that is to creation of a post of a Chief Superintendent of Police in the Hong Kong Police Force with effect from the date of approval by the Finance Committee to lead the Cybersecurity and Technology Crime Bureau CSTCB. The ESC has spent 5 hours in discussing the subject on the 7th, 8th, and 21st of February, and the FC has spent 4 hours in our meeting on the 12th and the 19th of May discussing this item. I would like to remind members that your questions must be related to the content of the paper, and you should refrain from repeating what you and others have said or repeat the discussion made at the ESC. And for questions on wider policy issues, please raise them at the full council meeting or the relevant panel meetings. Now, to answer questions by members, we have the team led by the Secretary for Secretary John Lee and his team. 2 members are lining up in the queue last time, and Kokaki and Mr. Charles Mok. Charles Mok, you're in the 3rd round, 3 minutes. Well, shouldn't it be the Dr. Kokaki first? It's rather Mr. Andrew Wang, 5 minutes. This has to do with finance. Maybe I will be asking about details. Please bear with me. Because I would like to know about cost effectiveness. I believe members of the public would have noticed that on the issues of cybersecurity and intelligence monitoring, there have been certain incidents in Hong Kong, including Kwok Wen Kwei incident. It is found that in relation to online monitoring in Hong Kong and also intelligence gathering, mainland authorities are doing that in Hong Kong. So that's what some say. But I noticed that recently there is this national intelligence law formulated or promulgated by the PRC. It discusses law enforcement outside and within the jurisdiction, and also about information or intelligence gathering. So I would like to know whether it covers Hong Kong as well. So after this law is passed, what will this impact on Hong Kong or one country systems principle? And I would like to hear from them first before I ask another question as a follow-up. I believe, Chairman, you understand what I'm asking. Now, if law enforcement is done in Hong Kong by the mainland authorities, will it create a problem in terms of law? Will there be any conflicts? So, Under Secretary, we are very concerned about issues like that. Please give an overall comments. I think it's difficult for you to give detailed answers on mainland laws. What my worry is this, Chairman. If, say, the relevant authorities are enforcing the law in Hong Kong, is that a problem? And also, if that is the case, for this position and the team, does he have to cooperate with the mainland authorities? And if we do have this worry, would you be telling the central authorities about a worry and whether this is in line with the basic law? Under Secretary. As to who has the power to enforce the law in Hong Kong, we have replied many times to the electrical and the members of the public. Only Hong Kong law enforcement bodies can enforce laws in Hong Kong. Any other law enforcement agencies outside of Hong Kong cannot enforce the laws in Hong Kong. Now, as to laws, what laws are effective in Hong Kong, Article 18 sets out clearly that, of course, the laws enforced in Hong Kong will take effect in Hong Kong, and also basic law can also be implemented in Hong Kong. For national laws, which have to be implemented in Hong Kong, well, only those in Annex 3 can be implemented in Hong Kong. So this is abundantly clear, I think. So can I have a follow-up? According to the PRC's National Intelligence Law Revised Version, now in the future, if any law enforcement agencies on the mainland are enforcing the law in Hong Kong, then that's illegal. And if that is really being done, what will LEAs, including the police, do in Hong Kong? I think I have given you a very clear answer. Any units which are not Hong Kong LEAs do not have the authority to enforce the law in Hong Kong. This is not in line with the basic law. I'm still not very clear about this. You said that you would not cooperate with them, right? So that's my understanding of your answer. So if they are doing this illegally, what will you do? Well, that's a more direct way to put it. Would you investigate into such acts or even prosecute them? Undersecretary, any person who is not within the Hong Kong LEAs, he doesn't have the authority to enforce any laws in Hong Kong. And if he is acting illegally in Hong Kong, in breach of Hong Kong laws, and he will be liable under Hong Kong laws. So the law is equal to everyone. Mr. Chow Smoke, I would like to follow up on a point raised in the first meeting by a member. Recently, I've also received certain cases about computer crimes. Say, when the person involved loses a computer, or his computer system is hacked and has got his data lost, or even his entire computer is lost, he reports the case to the police. And indeed, while his case is being kicked around in a way, and he is asked not to report the case, I wonder why this is the case. Is it the frontline police officers at police stations don't know that they can liaise or approach the CSTCB to seek assistance? Can you improve on the situation? Because people who are turned away by the police stations are seeking help from me, and I don't know how to help them. Can you do something about it? I've received so many such cases already. Time and again, people told me that the police stations would ignore them and ask them, or even persuade them to drop their cases. Undersecretary, anyone who goes into the police station to report a case involving illegal activities, police are obliged to deal with this case. So can I defer to Mr. Chung to take that question, Assistant Commissioner? Anyone who reports a case to the police station, the police officer on duty will get the information and try to understand the case. We have done a number of training programs, several dozen a year. We hold major talks for frontline police officers to let them understand the trends in computer crimes. Now, Mr. Mok can refer individual cases to us for follow-up after the meeting. I don't want myself handling every case. I think it's the police's duty. Maybe your training you should step up your training. Provide them with more information. Frontline police officers, whenever they hear about computer, and then they heard the terms IP address, and then they heard terms like hacking and so on. The frontline officers very often do not understand about these terms, and they try to drive the people away. So I've received so many such cases. Please pay attention to that. Maybe you should issue instructions to the reporting rooms of the police stations. Say, if the police frontline officers don't understand all these, they can approach the CSTCB for assistance. It seems that they are not doing that now. Yes, can I supplement? We will strengthen training for frontline officers. We are holding talks every now and then. We provide a hotline for the police officers to call up, and if needed, they can use that service. So that's only one member, Mr. Eddie Chu, and then followed by Claudia Mo, Raymond Chan. So members, if you are in this complex, please return to the meeting room to ask your questions. Now, if the members are finished with their questions, and we'll have to work on 37A. Please don't misunderstand me. I didn't intend to stop you from asking questions. We've got 37A already, so if you have other 37A, please submit them ASAP. Ms. Claudia Mo, 4 minutes. I have 4 minutes. I have asked many times before. Ms. Mo, according to our records, you've only asked questions once. Maybe you've asked questions at some other occasions, not here. Please. Chairman, I've been teaching classes to young people, discussing politics. China has the largest internet police force. And we are talking about internet sovereignty all the time. The internet world should be a boundaryless world. So if something happens within a certain jurisdiction, then the the authorities in that jurisdiction has a duty to sort of handle it. I'm sure that you have noticed Mr. Kwok Gui, the tycoon in exile in the U.S. He said that the security officers, national security officers on the mainland, are enforcing laws in Hong Kong, including monitoring on in the internet. So that's worrying. Of course, we will count on, say, evidence before we take anyone to the court or what. So my impression, well, back then, the mainland authorities were very eager to set up a green dam, a kind of firewall to block information out. The overseas journalists raised this question in Beijing. I can't remember if it's the State Council or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who said that they were handling, say, internet security, cyber security. And they said that you want your children, because there's lack of this firewall and green dam, they would come in touch with pornographic materials, child pornography stuffs, and so on. I think this is totally irrelevant. Now you are proposing this new CSP post to enhance Hong Kong's cyber security and combat on technology crimes. Maybe, in effect, you are trying to suppress freedom of speech in the internet. Maybe someone posted a remark like drop dead, then they will be accused of access to computer with dishonest intent. I'm worried about this, but you try to reassure me. I remain worried, and you can't convince me. I don't think there is no relationship between this CSBP post and suppression of freedom of speech on the internet. I think it has to do with the question of trust. The CSP post may not be really looking at cybersecurity, but rather trying to identify people who are politically incorrect and try to oppress them. There is indeed such allegation. So how would you respond to that, Undersecretary? I have said here many times, the police don't have any political mission at all. And what we look at is entirely whether certain acts are breaching the laws in Hong Kong. So going by Ms. Claudia Mo's logic, you should all the more support the creation of this post, because we are there to protect cybersecurity and that your safety is properly protected? Mr. Andrew Wan, 4 minutes. I think the Undersecretary has given me a good enough answer. Now, you will be trying to arrest those who are in breach of the law. For the mainland authorities, the investigation authorities, have they had any official cooperation with police in the past? Police in Hong Kong, I mean. The police has all along cooperated with our counterparts overseas in cracking down on crimes. And the Hong Kong police has taken part in many overseas operations, some of them being led by the Interpol. So when we talk about combating transnational crimes, then Hong Kong police will try to work together with international organizations like Interpol to crack down on transnational crimes. Now, say if the mainland investigation authorities, in the name of, say, cracking down on acts which will undermine territorial sovereignty and so on, and if they ask for cooperation from the Hong Kong police, will the police accede to their request? I think I've already given an answer to that question. In deciding on whether we should cooperate with overseas counterparts, the first thing to consider is whether this activity is illegal. Say, for example, in London, there is this terrorist attack. Of course, it's our duty to cooperate with the Interpol and overseas counterparts. So I believe that you understand what I'm driving at. I don't anyone will object to your answer if we're talking about countering terrorist attacks. But then I'm particularly referring to two controversial acts and sensitive acts. And if, say, some of our colleagues are voicing dissenting views, and that may be the subject of crackdown or investigation. Of course, the Undersecretary said that they will work on illegal activities. But if they said that they are doing this monitoring with a good legal backing, then that's going to be a problem. And what I'm worried may really happen. Is that the case? Undersecretary, at various occasions, I have said that there are so many cooperation. Telephone deception is one area which we should work together, and also cracking down on drugs trafficking is another area. So if there are any crimes or trans-jurisdictional crimes, and we would definitely work together with the overseas counterparts. That's our main principle. Next one, Mr. Raymond Chan. 3 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. Undersecretary, I believe that members of the public believe that CSTCB has a value and they should crack down on crimes. But our worry is that in its operation, will Hong Kong's people's freedom and privacy be undermined? Let me cite a concrete example, see if you can take that question. Last week, you have a major operation on child pornography. You arrested 15 local males, and in their computers, you found certain photos and so on. So child pornography is a serious crime. But then people said, well, the CSTCB can actually go into my computer, know exactly what films I have watched, what photos I have downloaded, and so on. Would you be, staging your operation in an undercover manner, and then you would pretend that you are a little child, little girls, and so on. So people find that your operation very surprising, and then you can actually do that. So can you say something to ease public concerns on that? So I think the perpetrators would definitely like to know the answer to your question.
So perhaps Mr. Chan can explain the police's work. Thank you. On the 18th of May, we completed Operation Hurdle and we arrested 15 males. They were found to possess pictures of child pornography or videos. In terms of intelligence, we exchange intel with other countries. And over the course of exchanges, we knew that certain criminals in Hong Kong are in possession of such materials, and we took action. Each search was legal and complete with warrants. From the pictures or videos we obtained, we made arrests on breach of the Hong Kong laws. So you talked about overseas intelligence, right? We gather intelligence through different means. I cannot go into detail on those intelligence, but we do have a mechanism in place to exchange intel with other countries. For security arrangements, they should not be discussed in the public in order to not help the criminals. But I think you can hold meetings behind closed doors so that members can know more. Your time's up. Please wait for the next round. Dr. K. Kwok, 4 minutes. Chairman, we are looking at two main issues. First of all, for cybercrime, for the dishonest use of computer, that's much cause for concern for many LegCo members. The Undersecretary said that there's a lack of trust in the ordinance, so he suggests introducing this post instead. But the ordinance itself also needs to be dealt with. But legislative amendments will take a long time, and this is not even on the agenda of the Law Reform Commission yet, and you will have to make a decision. So shouldn't the government work on that piece of legislation first, so that we can approve the creation of this post without much fanfare? Some members are concerned about the so-called cross-boundary collaboration, but in fact you're working with the Public Security Bureau in the mainland, and you might be gathering intelligence for them, and it might even be a form of political crackdown. You are likening your collaboration with the mainland with other international agencies like Interpol. We are not concerned about your collaboration with Interpol because they wouldn't make matters political. But in the mainland, we had the Lee Boy incident, and the government has turned a blind eye. And we also have the incident with Xiao Jianhua, and the police chose to ignore it. So in effect, it's the Hong Kong police gathering intelligence for the mainland through information technology. So that would be a problem, because we are directly or indirectly funding political crackdowns from the mainland. So there's no way we would agree to that. Undersecretary. Dr. Kwok talked about the dishonest use of computers, and as I have said many times, the Law Reform Commission is preparing for the law review, and there are experts and independent persons at the LRC who will look at how they want to deal with our laws, and no one knows about the conclusion yet. And some people might agree with Dr. Kwok, but there are also people who feel that our laws should have enough flexibility to deal with unforeseeable scenarios. For example, ransomware like WannaCry. If we only if we are limited by certain acts, then we would face constraints. So I think the LLC should look at that issue. You feel that the chief superintendent post should not be created before the ordinance is reviewed? Then this ordinance applies to all police officers. So with or without the chief superintendent, I don't see how there would be any impacts on the ordinance or crime. But I don't quite catch the logic of Dr. Kwok. Ms. Claudia Mo, 3 minutes. The LLC might be very busy. Since 2013, they are still studying the archives law and information freedom law. And for the crime, dishonest use of computers, I don't know whether it would still be it will be completed in a few years. And China has a bill on the national intelligence law. According to Article 9, the intelligence agencies of the mainland will, as needed, take out necessary measures and means to gather intelligence within and beyond their borders. Assuming that our new chief superintendent receives an order from Beijing, for example, if the task is to hack into Eddie Chu's computer, the police would still follow the order. Is that right? According to this law, it should be legal, right? Thank you. What Ms. Mo said is not in line with our understanding of the basic law. According to the BL, security is a Hong Kong affair. Undersecretary, I know you are going to be secretary soon, but please be direct. Assuming what I said happened, are you going to hack into Eddie Chu's computer? I don't think he would address any hypothetical questions. Why are you answering on his behalf? I think we should not ask hypothetical questions. This is according to our procedures. You made it clear that this is a hypothetical question. So all right, so let's assume that it's real. Please answer my question. Undersecretary, anything to add? Chairman, I wasn't trying to beat around the bush. We and the enforcement agencies in the mainland operate on mutual trust and independence. So the matter would be resolved by the Hong Kong police force. So he answered that question. So you shouldn't try to stand in the way. Are you saying that you wouldn't follow the order or the order from Beijing? Your time's up. Mr. Jeremy Tam. Chairman, I want to illustrate the differences by a real example. In the past week, there was a malware called WannaCry. It is a ransomware, and it can only be circumvented only after you pay. So without this, after this position is approved, for WannaCry, how would the police's plans be different? How would the police's work been reinforced? This question has been repeated many times, so perhaps Mr. Lee can say it again. First of all, any addition or deletion of police officer, well, we have no formula translating the number of police officer posts to the number of crimes which can be tackled. But without this chief superintendent, we would not be able to respond quickly to these unforeseeable incidents. And the reason is the chief superintendent has a wealth of knowledge and experience, and vision is very important in terms of technology crimes. Oh, that was not what I meant. What I meant was, with this chief superintendent post, with the incident, since this post, without this post, who took responsibility in investigating WannaCry, and with this new post, in terms of the hierarchy, would the scale of the team, of the responsible team, change? Would this new chief superintendent lead such incidents? So I'd like to know about the hierarchy and scale of the manpower of the police before and after creation of this post. With this chief superintendent, he will certainly oversee the incident. Right now, we only have one chief superintendent, and the senior superintendent will coordinate such incidents at the moment. With the new chief superintendent, the new CSP will be responsible. In other words, currently the senior superintendent will coordinate incidents like WannaCry, and in the future, the chief superintendent will be responsible. Is that the correct understanding? Yes, basically. All right, thank you. Some members are concerned about cyber surveillance with this new post. Would there be significant differences in manpower deployment, and whether the allocation of resources would change in terms of the establishment? How many officers are responsible for cyber surveillance? And how would they decide what to monitor? For example, would they carry out more surveillance based on recent trends? Or would they carry out surveillance equally among all crimes? Let me explain the concept before I hand over to Mr. Chung for the details. Cyber surveillance operates on a similar basis than physical patrols. For physical patrols, we will visit black spots and see if anyone wants to commit crime, and on the internet is similar. So perhaps Mr. Chung can tell us about the details. Well, by creating this new post, there are different impacts. Ms. Andrew Wong, 3 minutes. Thank you. After responding to Ms. Mo, I'm quite concerned based on what he said. Well, there is a possibility they talked about the Interpol platform, and I checked their website, and the mainland sometimes issues red warrants, and that you would render assistance when necessary. So how would you draw the line? I think that's what we are concerned about. Law enforcement agencies in Hong Kong might be inadvertently manipulated by the mainland agencies in order to crack down on dissent. For Guo Gui and his revelations, he said there is a surveillance base in Causeway Bay, Haiku, and China Resource Building, etc. All these are illegal surveillance, as I understand. After proving this pose, would you promise to investigate and follow up on such issues? If so, I would have another reason to support you. Based on the rules of procedure, Rule 25, you may not ask whether claims by private bodies or news reports are true. Thank you. First of all, for the red wanted list of Interpol, there are guidelines in place, and we are confident at the level of the Interpol and the various police forces around the world. Even when a red notice is issued, then the laws of the relevant polices must be followed, and we still need to apply for a warrant from the courts. I would not comment on specific cases. You need to explain to the courts why you need to do so, and the courts would only grant warrants when they are necessary. Can you convince us? Well, would you be using this as a tool to crack down on dissent? In my response to Mr. Wong and other members, I have said that regardless of background, whether it's a legislator, a police officer, or an ordinary citizen, they must abide by the laws. If they breach the Hong Kong laws, and the treatment would be equal towards anyone. Mr. Jeremy Tam. I'd like to give my time slot to the government. Mr. Chung. Thank you. In terms of cyber patrols, you asked about the differences with and without the chief superintendent. First of all, we need a chief superintendent because of international collaboration, strategy making, etc. Sometimes these would affect the operations of the bureaus. For the CSTCB, we have an intelligence support unit. The officers would gather operational intelligence and also strategic intelligence. And under operational intelligence, we have officers who conduct cyber patrols. The actual size of the team would depend on the actual circumstances, our focus, risk levels, etc. After securing the intel, we would analyze them further. All right. I looked at your enclosure 3, your organization chart. Under the CSP, you have an SSP. For cyber intelligence sections 1 and 2, the structures are identical. Right now, you said you need a chief superintendent to facilitate external communications, and that they can that he can exchange views with other police agencies around the world, and the position of this staff can be elevated within the force. And in enclosure 3, you have a chief superintendent.
之後呢，就
And then we have 3 groups of police. And if you just look at the chief superintendent of police to have a higher post, then why don't you add the CSP and then delete the post of a senior policeman? Well, you're just saying that the coordinating work, you want to enhance their post. Well, if I look at your establishment, there's no change. You just added a layer. Could you explain? Undersecretary? Well, Mr. Tam, you have highlighted the deficiency in our framework. If I add a CSP and delete another post, then overall it is defeating the whole purpose of strengthening our posts in terms of strategy, vision, and coordination. So, given our emphasis on tackling crime, we have organized crime, commercial crime, drugs, and so on. We have a CSP and then a senior policeman. We already have that ring. Well, I don't want to interrupt. I just want to clarify. You're saying that in enclosure 2, the other branches, I see you have operations department, you have the different wings. There's an assistant commissioner, and then underneath there are different levels of staff. Yes. In commercial crime, we also have 2 assistant commissioners. Dr. Fernando Chung. Well, recently, the terrorist attack in Manchester has given rise to a scandal that the U.S. had leaked some anti-terrorist information from the UK. So regarding the surveillance and the collection of information, do we have any intelligence exchange agreements with mainland China? And these agreements, could you disclose some of the basic principles? Under what conditions will we divulge intelligence collected from Hong Kong? And what will they disclose to us? Undersecretary. The Hong Kong police and overseas police conduct intelligence exchange to tackle crime. The exchange of intelligence, I won't focus on one particular country, but the general principle is that it has to be confidential, and then there has to be a third-party rule. We cannot disclose it to a third party. That is, the information exchange between A and B, it's only limited to A and B. You cannot hand it over to C. That's briefly what the arrangement is. So, we want to tackle crime, but the definition of crime in the mainland and the Hong Kong SAR definitions of crime might be different. For example, overseas, they might have national security or other crimes they need to tackle. But Hong Kong, these crimes might not exist in Hong Kong. So, if mainland requires information from Hong Kong, will we still have to disclose it? Undersecretary. Thank you, Chairman. The exchange of intelligence platform, the decision rests with the sovereignty. So whatever intelligence is exchanged between A and B, A can choose to provide or not provide, regardless of what B is requesting. So B can also choose to provide or not provide, regardless of what A's request is. So Hong Kong police and other intelligence agencies abide by this rule. Chairman, I wasn't asking who has the right to decide. I'm saying if the mainland decides that there's some crime being committed by certain people and requests information from Hong Kong, and even though there's a different definition in crime between the two jurisdictions, if it's related to crime on the mainland, will we still disclose this information to the mainland? The decision rests with the Hong Kong police. Mr. Kokake. Chairman, I had asked the Undersecretary a question that the exchange of intelligence with the mainland, it wasn't answered. Let me be more specific. In the past 5 or 10 years, the law enforcement agencies collected intelligence, whether it's cyber intelligence or other intelligence. How much intelligence did they collect through Hong Kong? That's the first question. Just now, the Undersecretary said the Hong Kong has the right to decide. Well, let's say in Australia or U.S. they have different laws. So my understanding is that to a certain extent, let's say mainland or overseas jurisdictions, the laws might not be the same. Have you not enforced the law because of this difference? And third, in the mainland has different laws. They have subversion of a country, and they have different laws. It's very strange to Hong Kong people, and it might seem counter to human rights. So what mechanism does Hong Kong police have? For example, if law enforcement agencies from the mainland have some suspicions and they request Hong Kong to surveil or use a cyber intelligence gathering to investigate or collect information from individuals, how many times have Hong Kong police declined, and how many times did they not investigate because these laws don't exist in Hong Kong? Is that true that because of asymmetrical laws that Hong Kong police don't enforce the laws? Well, the police gather intelligence based on whether the activity is conducted in Hong Kong, whether it is a criminal act in Hong Kong. That is the principle. So that means, so you don't deal with cases of provoking trouble and picking grounds. Well, this is a criminal intelligence, and this is information gathered, and if we have that information, we can still decide whether to disclose that information. And as I answered previously, the decision rests with us. What about the statistics? He should give us statistics. Eddie Chu, 2 minutes. I have a short question. We have social media such as WhatsApp, and if there's interception and surveillance, do you have the statistics on that? Can they answer? Undersecretary? Well, on the last occasion I had already explained. Interception and surveillance ordinance says that it defines what can be disclosed and how the disclosure should be conducted. What can be disclosed is spelt out in the ordinance, and the method of disclosure is outlined in the Commissioner's report, annual report. So if the Undersecretary is not going to give us the statistics, then I would like to ask just now a lot of colleagues had asked, the PRC National Intelligence Law is there is a lot of consultation going on regarding this. So I would like to ask you, do you know that there's a drafting of this National Intelligence Law, Undersecretary? Thank you, Chairman. I received the question raised by Mr. Eddie Chu. I am aware. So you were only aware after I told you? Correct. Okay, thank you, Undersecretary. So after I told you, have you looked at Article 9? The gathering of intelligence domestically and overseas, have you looked into that? Well, on the last occasion and on this occasion, a lot of our colleagues are worried about cyber patrolling and the intelligence gathered. How do we interact with the mainland? If they ask for it, will we provide it to them? And just now I heard the Undersecretary respond to Mr. Kokai's case. I'm not sure if I heard wrong. I'd like you to clarify. If there's a criminal activity in Hong Kong, if they request that information, Hong Kong will provide that. If it's not a criminal activity, you won't provide that information. Is that correct? Let me explain again. In Hong Kong, what do we mean by criminal intelligence? That is the relevant information after assessment, whether it involves illegal activities. That is criminal intelligence. It's in Hong Kong, right? Are you saying the act is illegal in Hong Kong? That is what we need to consider. Hong Kong has a drug ordinance, and overseas also have drug ordinance, so we can share that information. If I don't have that law in Hong Kong, then would I get that information intelligence in the first place? That's the simple answer. If we don't have that law, how can I collect information, criminal intelligence in this area? It's not a criminal act. But if it's a criminal act in Hong Kong, then you've already undertaken arresting operations. Why do you still need to provide intelligence? Chairman, Mr. Leung perhaps is confusing operations and intelligence. Intelligence is any information that is valuable, that is related to criminal acts. It's valuable, and whether it can become an operation, it depends on how much evidence that has been collected. So every day we deal with a lot of intelligence. For example, it's even news. Somebody would say there's a gambling den. Does that mean do we have to go investigate? Well, we have to consider the accuracy of the intelligence. We have to spend some effort to see if it's real or fake. That's what the police does. So after assessment, we can confirm it's trustworthy. We then need to convert the intelligence into actual operations, operational intelligence. For example, how large the gambling den is, how many criminals are involved, how many staff I need to deploy at what time. So the conversion of intelligence into operations takes time and effort. We need a lot of experience in order to do that. So intelligence and operations, you can divide it, classify it roughly as such. Mr. Yu Tong-Yim. First of all, thank you for the 18th of May, some cybercrime statistics. I see that commercial crime, commercial cybercrime, and illegal entry into computer networks, there has been a significant downward trend in the last 3 years. I'd like to hear from the government, is it because you have new measures and that's why we get these good results, and can you and when you add the new posts, can you further reduce this type of crime? I'd like to have Assistant Commissioner Mr. Chung respond. Well, of course, in the last few years, we have to look at the overall crime trend, we have to do analysis, and we need to come up with specific measures. Our CSP will strengthen international cooperation. He also needs to have vision, and he needs to do prevention work with stakeholders. So all this work can help us in prevention of crime, and also enhances our investigation powers. Let me give you some examples. In some cases, we see cybercrime. We will take action with overseas jurisdictions, and we also have cyber fraud. We collect intelligence. We interact with the relevant parties, and most importantly, in cybercrime, we need to do a lot of prevention work. So education is very important. So if we have a CSP, we would like to do better. That is working with all our stakeholders, draft up some strategies and step up our education work and prevent cybercrime. Well, could you answer my first part? The drop, the trend, it's already a trend. Let's say a cyber commercial crime, from 2,300 cases, it's dropped to 1,602 cases in 2016. And if you look at illegal entry into a computer system, and from 1,900 now, it's now 1,100. It's almost half. So it's been a continuous trend. So could you explain? Is it because of your investigation measures, or have you introduced new technology, or do you have, or have you added more manpower to achieve these results? Thank you, Chairman. Well, cybercrime is changing. Just now you mentioned that one important factor is education and prevention. These are very important measures. For example, if you enhance computer security, it can prevent crime. In our education work, we use different channels. We describe the modus operandi of crime. Then the publics are less susceptible to crime. So in education, we feel that is very effective, of course. We do have syndicate crime. Let's say if you can bust a syndicate, a crime syndicate, it can deal a blow to different areas of crime. So so what is the consideration when you deploy resources? For example, in the breakdown in crime, there are some changes or even increase in crime statistics. So if you focus on education, then maybe you need to spend more money on education. But if you say that adding more resources to investigation can help detect crime, and then maybe you should spend more money there. So I'd like you to analyze it a bit more. I would support it if you could give us a more thorough analysis of where our money should be spent. Well, let me answer Mr. Yu's question. Actually, all crime there's no single factor. Mr. Yu's analysis is correct. In cybercrime, first of all, it's ever-changing. So we have to continuously educate the public to step up security. And in our detection methods, we need to fine-tune our techniques. And third, our staff, they need upgrading. So the CSP doesn't involve himself directly into that. We don't need a CSP to investigate a case, but he needs to lead a team. He has to provide leadership and direction, and such that they can coordinate with international trends. I think Mr. Yu is also thinking along these lines. Ms. Tanya Chan?
I would like to ask, In the reply to Mr. Eddie Zhu, Annex 2 talks about the CSTCB up to 1st of May 2017. There are 238 staff members in this bureau, and earlier the government has submitted a paper setting out the various the number of talents, and many staff members of the police have held the relevant qualifications. What are these qualifications? Okay, I will give an overall response and then I will ask the police to supplement. 98% of the staff members have various qualifications. At least 10 of them have qualifications accredited by Interpol, and they've been trained by Interpol to train others on technological crimes. Say, for example, the number of students have been trained. Well, they come from South Korea, Singapore, etc. And now 12 hold a master's and doctorate degree, and Dr. Frank Law is in fact holds a doctorate degree himself. So can I defer to the Assistant Commissioner to elaborate? Thank you, Chairman. I agree that training is of utmost importance. The Undersecretary said that many of the staff members have the relevant qualifications. On top of that, when they joined us at the Bureau, there are a lot of internal training programs. Say, for example, every year we have 10 or so various training programs for our staff. And also our staff will also join professional training overseas and on the mainland. And at the same time, well, we are an active member in the Interpol network. So we have some staff members who are Interpol accredited trainers as well. So these are the major training programs. Okay, I would like to ask, in the last meeting, many colleagues have referred to the ransomware WannaCry. So I'd like to ask, what have the police done about this? The ITB has this Hong Kong CERT established, and it helps the government and various departments to do response work on major computer incidents. And on the 15th of May, someone asked Mr. Yang what could be done if they were attacked. Should they pay or what? And Mr. Young's reply is that the first thing to do is to contact the HKCRT, which has its team standby to help you. So I would like to confirm, the Bureau will help and explain to the public all these incidents, and how is your divisional work between the CSTCB and the Hong Kong CERT? And in relation to WannaCry, what have you done? Because you've got quite a big team at the Bureau already. So let me answer from the perspective of our structure, and then I'll ask Dr. Law to talk about WannaCry and also the division of work between the two. So if you report, if you want the police to investigate into a crime or criminal act, then you should try to approach the police. But some people would not like to report the case to the police. They just want some assistance, so they should approach then the Hong Kong CERT to seek assistance. Now, Hong Kong CERT will advise you on the remedial measures, and it also collects the modus operandi of the criminals, and then disseminate information to people so that they can take preventive measures. Dr. Law, please. Thank you. Since the exposing of the WannaCry incident, we have worked with the Hong Kong cert. Hang on, please. Dr. Law, would you press the button again? All right. Okay, 4 minutes. Yes, please go on. After the incident happened, we contacted the Hong Kong cert in the first instance, and we exchanged views with them. And also, we are concerned about the security arrangements within the government. We have contacted the government cert, the Hong Kong cert, and we are liaising also with the stakeholders, and we've made an analysis and exchanged intelligence. We want to collect the information I want to acquire through various incidents, and we would like to disseminate information to enhance security awareness. So after the incident happened, we collected the information in the first instance, and through our existing channels, dissemination information on how people should step up their prevention efforts. And these include stakeholders of major infrastructures and also the general public at large. Sorry, Dr. Law, I am getting confused here. You said that there is a government coordination center which is teaching the public, and for the Hong Kong cert, you are also doing the same thing, enhance public awareness. But then the Hong Kong cert should be in the crime wing or division, and you should be responsible for investigation, right? So I really don't see how the police have been effective in responding to this major crisis of WannaCry. So, well, who will take that question? Yes, please. Thank you, Ms. Chan, for your question. As pointed out, the police discharge many functions. Apart from investigating into crimes, the police also do public education and publicity. Ms. Chen referred to the publicity and public education work that we've been doing, including liaising with the stakeholders. I refer to the Hong Kong cert, having liaison with different stakeholders to get information on WannaCry. And after the information is collected, then we will proceed with our public education and publicity work. And there are two major groups of stakeholders. The first one is the major infrastructures in Hong Kong, for example, government, banks, telecommunications, public utilities, and transport operators. So within this group, once we've got the information, we would, through our existing mechanism, disseminate the information to them so that they can step up their prevention immediately and understand how the attack was like. And then the second group is the members of the public. We are very concerned about them too. So after the incident happened, we have disseminated the next day through the police's Facebook information on tips on how to take precaution. So have I got it right that they were doing it the next day after the incident? Yes, the day after the WannaCry incident. We know that that straddles across a weekend, and people didn't dare to start the computers, switch on the computers. When did you exactly information? And the incident happened on the 12th of May, and then on the 13th of May, we disseminated information to our stakeholders. And the 14th of May, such information is uploaded onto the police's Facebook page. Next one, Mr. Lang Kwok-hong, 2 minutes. Fellow members, the police could do nothing. Whether it's private organizations, mainland authorities hacking into our computer, there is nothing they can do because there is no law empowering them to do anything. Can you confirm that? The Interception of Communication and Covert Surveillance Ordinance governs the government only, and and is not covering other parties, right? Can you confirm that first? You sounded as if they could do something. Let's not have any illusion. You couldn't catch the mainland authorities coming here to hack into our computers. Well, please confirm this. Well, we've been spending 3 hours on this already. So is it that case that you are powerless to do anything? You don't have the power to enforce the law? Please. These are not hypothetical questions. These are questions on legal points. Is it the case? Chairman, Undersecretary. Under Hong Kong laws, unauthorized access to computer is illegal. So this covers everyone. What about the police? Undersecretary. The police have to act in accordance with the law. Understand. So anyone, including the police, if they are not authorized to access people's computers, they should not do so. And they should not access other people's device, right? It's illegal. Is that what you meant? Everyone, right? Chairman, the laws empower the police to do something in that aspect under certain circumstances. Dr. Fernando Zhang, 2 minutes. I asked some questions on this post last time. I have several areas of concern. First is that the police have been ever expanding its size, so is there a need for this position? Second, I'm worried about the abuse of power. And there is little, say, limitation on interception of communication. And third, will it become a tool for the mainland authorities to collect intelligence in Hong Kong? I asked the Undersecretary, there are 2 different sets of laws in Hong Kong and the mainland. The mainland may consider something as illegal, but that's not the case in Hong Kong otherwise. Maybe they are concerned about sovereignty, territorial sovereignty, and so on. So are there any principles guiding the exchange of information or intelligence? So the Undersecretary said that it will be their decision to on this aspect. But are there certain principles or guidelines that you can tell the public so that the public can get reassured? Undersecretary. Dr. Chan, let me explain again. What do you mean by criminal intelligence? If you ask me for an orange, then I don't have an orange. Then I can give you an orange. So under our criminal intelligence system, well, information will only be kept on illegal activities. So the first thing is whether we have such intelligence, and before I can decide whether to share it with you. Now, whether we have this piece of intelligence, then that will depend on whether this intelligence is related to an illegal act. So that's how the concept works. So it's up to you as to how you interpret all these considerations. Next one, Mr. Raymond Chan. Chairman, I was about to finish my last sentence, but then you switched off my mic. My question was, when the Bureau enforces law, people are worried about invasion of privacy and freedom. And the Undersecretary said that he can't give us the details in relation to detection of crimes. I know that it will be difficult for you to set out the details of individual cases, but then the public are still worried. Maybe at the security panel in the future or in some closed-door meetings, you can let us know more. Or maybe you can go on a visit to the CSTCB so that at least we get to better understand the Bureau, and then we can tell the public then we should have greater confidence in you. Well, perhaps we can even be asked to sign a confidentiality agreement. Mr. Chung, please. If needed, of course, we can arrange for a briefing for you. And we also welcome members visiting our Bureau for us to explain our work. That can be done. Thank you, Chairman. I would like to follow up on the number of crimes, because earlier on, we have been talking about the nature of crimes under Section 161 of the Crimes Ordinance, and the Undersecretary said that the figures have to be looked at as a whole. In the paper dated 18th of May, the administration has given us some figures. These are not prosecution figures, right? These are the number of cases reported, right? You can have a very detailed breakdown here. But how come that you can't give us a detailed breakdown with in relation to access to a computer with dishonest intent? So you give us a number of cases reported, and not the cases convicted or prosecuted. Mr. Chung, it's very difficult to give you a straightforward answer because it's quite a complicated scenario. Ms. Tanya Chan, 3 minutes. So perhaps I'll give him the time to answer Mr. Raymond Chan's question. Yes, please. Thank you, Chairman. For the crime figures, we are giving out the figures based on the nature of the cases. Well, if we have to do that, it will involve a lot more work. For example, fraud cases. If we know that this is a fraud case, then how much help it would in our investigation? Then we have to have detailed breakdowns on the fraud cases. Say, for example, that can be online romance scams or social media scams, or scams related to investment and so on. We have to do the analysis here. So we are categorizing the cases based on their nature. Then that will help us better understand the crime trends so that we can come up with better strategy to tackle them. Let me cite another example. For example, naked check. This is the nature of the case, and the crime is really blackmail. In 2013, well, I'm talking about Annex 1 here, a paper dated 18th of May, the naked check cases. 2012 and 13, there's not a rising trend. So they might have fallen into the category of blackmail because by nature is that kind of case. And then in 2014, we saw that there was a rising trend, so we had to do detailed analysis. So we have made this a separate category of naked check. So this figure here is here. And so you see that other blackmail cases have dropped in number as a result. So if we've got that category, that dedicated category, we can have a targeted approach to tackle them or crack them down. And we are also collaborating with overseas authorities to mount operations, and we are seeing results. So one is the type of crime, the other is the nature of the cases. So online policing, I would like to know, you've got detailed figures. The government, well, what's the number of cases detected after the police have done its policing, and do you have the figures for the last 3 years? Mr. Chung? Yes, we have done online policing, and we have some results seen. But we don't have the concrete figures. What about the prosecution numbers and the types of cases involved? Well, we don't have such figures. Ms. Claudia Mo, 2 minutes. Earlier, the government officials asked us not to worry. They would catch anyone who breaks the law, and everyone is equal before the law. Well, please do some soul searching here for those within the power, from the Secretary for Justice to the police. Well, the law is in your hand, and well, for the average citizen, in the name of obstructing the police execution of duties, you can do anything with us. And the netizens are worried about the access to computer with honest intent. You said that the Law Reform Commission is studying into it, so don't worry. But I don't know how long the Law Reform Commission will take to finish their work. Maybe 3, 5, 7 years. And also for Article 23 version, some sedition and so on, there is no local legislation yet. But it will be a matter of time before we have local legislation. This bureau, which is taking care of tax crime, it will also be really looking after this online subversion, sedition, and so on. Is that the case?
Currently, the police's powers are based on the Hong Kong laws. So, of course, the police can exercise powers vested in the laws of Hong Kong. I cannot speculate about the future. I'm not done yet. Dr. Kiki Kwok, 2 minutes. Chairman, let me repeat my question. For sharing of criminal intelligence with the mainland authorities, I requested figures over the past 10 years. For crimes of the mainland, as well as those vested in the Hong Kong laws, can he elaborate more? Mr. Chung. Thank you. The Hong Kong police works with mainland and overseas authorities based on guidelines from Interpol, including exchange of information as well as cross-boundary enforcement. And the scope is quite wide. For example, sharing of intel on crimes, warnings on criminal practices, criminal trends, etc. I asked about figures and whether you can give us a breakdown. I'd like to first explain the context. Well, Chairman, he's filibustering, so what are you going to do? Please continue. We have no such figures. What about the red notices and things like that? Does Hong Kong have to comply with them? Chairman, another member also talked about red notices. Those are a procedure of Interpol, and it's a long-standing procedure. A red notice is just a notice before any action is taken. The local laws must be complied with. If arrests are to be made, the normal practice is to apply for a warrant from the courts before any action can be taken. Ms. Tanya Chen, thank you. I talked about cyber patrols. Apparently, no figures could be provided. For CAB 161, the government was very helpful, and they provided breakdowns of crimes under CAB 161, including internet gambling. So the police spent a lot of time compiling that table. You were not able to provide figures on detected crimes or the number of people arrested or breakdown of the crime types. The police said they would classify the crimes by type. So for the types of crimes involving cyber patrols, well, if these cyber patrols can help detect more crimes, then more officers could be assigned. So I'd like to obtain these figures. Mr. Chung, as I said, we have no such figures. Cyber patrols are one way of detecting online crimes, and there are also other channels. So it might not be easy to classify whether a crime is detected because of cyber patrols. For familiar social media such as Facebook, Instagram, Golden, Discuss Hong Kong, for such platforms, or the provision of information by internet service providers and the relevant arrests of netizens, can you provide any numbers? Every year, we share with LESCO the requests we made to internet service providers every year. So we have 3,000 to 4,000 cases every year. Mr. Lan Kwok-hong. You said hacking into computers is illegal. If the police does it, would any action be taken? How many warrants do you obtain every year to access other people's computer? Is there any statistic? So you need a warrant, or else it would be illegal. How many warrants have you obtained in a year? Thank you. If our action is regulated by the Interception of Communications Ordinance, then our actions would comply with the ordinance. How many cases are there? Your report did not mention this. You only talked about the bugging devices and secret surveillance, etc. Your time's up. Mr. Ray Chen. I'd like to follow up on the figures on technology-related crimes. For naked chat and blackmail, originally naked chat fell under blackmail, but later you made it a new category. So in other words, you can create new categories for crimes. For access to computer with dishonest intent, for example, if you take upskirt photos or photos of urine or feces, and they are also crimes. So why don't you create new categories for these? In the information security system, well, Undersecretary, for the items in enclosure 1, is that part of your internal system? I realize you have certain requests which we are happy to explore, but since multiple departments and systems are involved, we are exploring how the requests could be entertained. We hope that we can make some progress within the year. I urge members who are in the building to ask questions at an appropriate time. We would enter we would deal with the motions under Rule 37A. So, Mr. Yu Kin Yun, if you have questions, please press the button. Dr. Edward Yu, 4 minutes. I'd like to talk about a case in UK and explore the exchange of intelligence between yourselves and the exchanges. There was a cyber attack in October 2015 called TalkTalk, and 160,000 people were affected, and information from 1,500 accounts were stolen, and there were arrests made in 2017 in the UK. and the hackers were found to use a software called SQL map. So for this case, did Hong Kong come up with relevant measures to avoid similar attacks? Can this new post help protect us from relevant attacks in Hong Kong? Thank you. Dr. Yu is correct. With this new chief superintendent, our capability in international coordination will certainly be enhanced in terms of global collaboration. Other authorities can decide whether they want to collaborate with the Hong Kong police. With this chief superintendent, we can build links with other authorities, and we would have a bigger influence, and we would be able to carry out more extensive intel sharing. So we hope that we can create this post in order to serve Hong Kong. That's why we've been asking for the creation of this post. Thank you. I want to use this example to find out what the benefits are. That's why I cited a very important example to illustrate the benefits, and that more people can understand the situation. I'd like to invite Mr. Chang. Well, in Hong Kong, through Interpol, we have taken out actions in other countries to good effect. Mr. Chang, in terms of naked chat, we had 690 odd cases, but I won't go into detail. For naked chat, we work with the Philippines. As the Undersecretary said, there's a third-party rule on intelligence sharing, and the money involved was remitted to the Philippines from the intelligence we offered from 2014 to 2016. There were multiple operations involved, and many people based in the Philippines were arrested, and the victims were mainly in Hong Kong, and we have exchanged intel with them so that they could carry out litigations in the Philippines. Mr. Jeremy Tam, 3 minutes. Thank you. I'd like to follow up on the cyber patrols. Just like physical patrols, the police would have to monitor crimes on the internet, and government departments would carry out cyber patrols to prevent crimes. For physical patrols, they would the officers would serve a deterrent effect on members of the public or people who plan to commit crimes. For example, people might think twice before crossing the road illegally. But for cyber patrols, this effect is not available. So how can you show people that the police is indeed working without giving the impression that you are monitoring people's every move? So how would you able to achieve this objective? How would you decide the frequency of the patrols? For physical patrols, it's easy to explain to the public the number of patrols you make, how can you go about it on the internet? Undersecretary, in the real world, patrols are conducted in public space. On the internet, the concept is similar. The police would work on public domains. If certain crimes are rampant, for instance, sometimes there were trading of drugs online. I see what you mean. But for physical patrols, would-be criminals and members of the public can see you. But on the internet, I wouldn't know that the police is actually monitoring the cyberspace or watching over me. So how can you tell the public that you are actually conducting patrols? And how would you gauge how often you should conduct the patrols? Please wait for the next round. Ms. Alvin Young, 4 minutes. Chairman. I hope members understand the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 minute system. Your time slot includes question and answer. Ms. Alvin Young, 4 minutes. Can the Undersecretary answer Mr. Jeremy Tam's question? Are there objective standards for such cyber patrols or scope or even statistics? So that was Mr. Tam's question. Thank you. I'd like to invite Mr. Chung to talk about the details. After I explain the principles, the concept is very similar to physical patrols. Mr. Tam talked about uniformed officers and as well as officers in plain clothes. In public spaces, we would conduct patrols together, intel on crime. This is something we have been doing for years. There is a deterrent. You said there's a deterrent effect because you paid attention only to uniformed officers, but sometimes we also have plainclothes officers. The objective is also to gather intel on crimes. For example, if there's a black spot for vehicle thefts, and we need both types of officers. I hate to interrupt, but I think we really we understand the logic. I don't want to waste the Undersecretary's time in explaining something which is obvious. We want to focus on the cyberspace. How can you make sure that the patrols are have a deterrent effect, and can you share any figures? Undersecretary, for cyber patrols, the main objective is to gather intel on crime. Perhaps Mr. Chung can give us the details. Mr. Chung. The public would know that we conduct cyber patrols for the prevention of crime. For some of our success stories, we have said that most laws apply to the internet as well. So through different channels, we try to disseminate these messages so that people would know that they also have to abide by the laws online. So cyber patrols would pinpoint criminal activities, for example, syndicated prostitution, sale of illegal goods, frauds, etc. So we would carry out such patrols in different circumstances. We do have certain directions or strategies. We would pay more attention to problem areas, but we do not have formal statistics on the number of patrols.
So how do we gauge the police deployment of resources? Just now we heard there was some direction. Could they be more specific? Whether it's a monthly, weekly, will you target a specific type of activity? We need to know. Are you unable to disclose the information? Well, I'd like you to understand. Internet cybercrime changes, criminal behavior changes, so it's hard to pinpoint what will happen at what time. Mr. Xiu Gajun. Well, this question is about the real world, the virtual world. So in the government's paper, we see that there are major types of crime, including criminal intimidation, fraud, theft, and so on. And the Security Bureau official tells us that these involve, and there are improvements. But the paper also says that cybercrime statistics, they have criminal intimidation, miscellaneous fraud, and so on. So how do you define cybercrime? So when it involves a computer, the internet, a mobile phone, then the crime is labeled as cybercrime. Undersecretary, I defer to Mr. Zhong. Well, regarding the definition, there are two perspectives. Where the attack subject is a computer or a computer system, then that would be a cybercrime. Another classification is the use of computers or other equipment to use as a medium to conduct an illegal activity. That's cybercrime. So this definition, even though the wording might be slightly different, but the principle is more or less the same across the world. So, Chairman, the action itself is the same. It's just that the difference in medium, whether it's conducted through a different medium. Let me be more clear. There are two definitions. You use this medium to conduct a crime, and second, you are attacking a computer system. So that's a very simple, simplified version. Okay, Mr. Jeremy Tam, regarding cyber patrols, could you tell us how many officers are responsible for cyber patrolling on a daily basis? And if you're already doing that work, what benchmark or criteria do you apply? Because it's different from a police beat where they have to sign in the logbook. How do you know that your staff have really done cyber patrolling? Mr. Zhong? Well, I mentioned cyber patrolling has to be conducted. It's to prevent and investigate crime. So how much time do you spend per day? Of course, we do have a framework. We have officers. We collect intelligence, and we will deploy resources into those areas. So I cannot give you a hard and fast rule who will do what, because as I said, the crime changes. Well, my question was very clear. You have not answered the establishment. I'm not asking what you've done. I'm saying, how do you monitor your frontline staff are really doing that work? Is it because they logged in a number of hours, the number of websites they browse, how much information they read? What's the criteria? Let me elaborate a bit more. So cyber patrolling, we are talking about the police has different wings, and they had have these responsibilities. You have not answered my question. You haven't answered the establishment. How do you monitor their work? Well, if you can't answer that, you can just say so. I was trying to explain the establishment, how many people are doing cyber patrol, because there are different wings doing this work. It's not the main focus. They might be doing other work. Sometimes they might have to do cyber patrolling. So we cannot identify the establishment. Mr. Alvin Young? I'd like to follow up with Mr. Roman Tam's question. We can see that there are police officers on this beat. They have to sign in their logbooks. We can understand this is an effective monitoring of whether the police have patrolled their precinct, and it's also a deterrent. We just want to know: is there a similar arrangement on the cyber front? Well, I can understand if there are confidentiality requirements, but we also need to know whether the police have done their job. I just want to know if there's such a mechanism. Undersecretary, well, let me explain. The concept is different. When I answered Mr. Tam's, Jeremy Tam, and Mr. Alvin Young's question, the patrolling has two effects. You were only talking about uniformed police. We're now talking about plainclothes. Of course, on the internet, there's no difference between uniform and plainclothes. But the purpose is not a deterrent affair. We are just collecting intelligence. So it's not. So if you're thinking about that stereotype, that means you're not familiar with police work, and I need to explain that to you. We're trying to collect intelligence. I'm not saying I have to have a policeman on the internet and use a login sign as a policeman. That has no deterrent effect. So on the cyber front, we have different wings in their actual work. When they will patrol the internet, it's not as a deterrent effect. They collect intelligence, including sex, pornography, drugs, gambling, criminals, intelligence. Thank you, Undersecretary. I am not familiar with police work. Thank you for your elaboration. I'd like you to further elaborate. As management, how do you have any objective criteria to assess your frontline staff? How do you measure whether they have done their work? I want to know. Thank you, Chairman. Just now, Mr. Chung said there are we have police constables, sergeants. We have station officers. They will manage their subordinates. I heard there are a bunch of ranks, but how do they measure the subordinates' work? Do you have the standards for measurement? They have to report. If I instructed a certain person to do some work, they have to tell me what they've done and what results they've achieved. So that's a daily interaction. Mr. Eddie Chu? Well, I'd like the Hong Kong public to know that I asked the Undersecretary about the PRC National Intelligence Law. Our Undersecretary for Security Bureau said that I wrote a letter on 25th of May, and that made him aware of this draft law. And the 17th, 18th of May, there were 4 Hong Kong media outlets that reported this incident. And don't you think that it's your negligence? You should have known about it. And I'm now specifically asking, will you ask the Chinese government on behalf of the Hong Kong public that they will conduct overseas intelligence gathering work legally, and how this will impact Hong Kong, and can you report back to the Legislative Council before the 1st of July? Chairman, our interaction with the state, it's very clear in Article 18 of the Basic Law, the national laws are not applicable in Hong Kong unless it's in Schedule 3 and it complies with Article 18. Dr. Fernando Cheung, Chairman, I was asking our exchange of intelligence with the mainland, and the Undersecretary said Hong Kong has the discretion, and he said we need to clarify. We have to have oranges in order to share oranges. So he's been evading my question. Second, the so-called orange analogy is misleading. So you have the whole forest under your monitoring, and you have a lot of intelligence in front of you. You can pick an orange from an orange tree, or you can pick an apple from an apple tree. So what I'm worried is Hong Kong human rights, will they be trampled or limited by this exchange of intelligence? Let's say, take me for example. Let's say I'm a target of intelligence gathering. Well, am I communicating with overseas sovereignty? And so the Chief Superintendent of Police has gathered intelligence on me and says, Fernando Cheung, in the last month, has he communicated with the U.S., for example? So this information is in your system, and you can collect it at will. So this orange is your time's up. So under what circumstances will you exchange this information? Mr. Siu Ka-chun, I'm asking about the relationship between cybercrime and real world crime. Are we seeing a trend towards cybercrime? If we see a trend towards cybercrime, then we shouldn't be creating a post of a new CSP. So why can't the criminal wing investigate the work? Why can't we have the regular wings that deal with intimidation, fraud, and so on? Well, why do we have to have a new CSP? I really wonder. The police are creating a new problem just to collect new resources. Well, I don't want to see a new problem. Did we create WannaCry? Is it something fake? I said that we weren't even able to look ahead and avoid imminent threats. Every jurisdiction is dealing with these threats. Mr. Lam Go Hong. Well, how many orders do you receive per year to enter computer systems? Well, it's for example, uniformed police they don't need orders. They can knock on a door. So I want to ask you, how many orders have you requested? How many did you get? And how many computer accounts have you entered? Thank you, Chairman. This is not my first attempt at answering this question. If it involves surveillance and interception or ordinance and the exercise of authority, the ordinance limits our powers, and it also that is in the Commissioner's report every year. They will report back to the Chief Executive and Legislative Council. Well, how many? So we have to strike a balance between crime prevention, and it's hard for me to disclose. So, colleagues, this item has been under discussion since June 2014 in the Security Panel and the Establishment Subcommittee. In 2014, 15, 16, and 2017, we had discussed 10 hours. We already had 6 hours of discussion in the FC, and we had 87 speaking turns. So this item has repeated it severely. For example, we had 19 instances of political questioning regarding Cap 589, hacking. We had 11 instances, internal deployment of resources, and whether we need to create a post. It has 7 discussions regarding WannaCry. There were 11 discussions, and we also had 1 adjournment. So I've decided that the speakers who have pressed the button can speak for the last time, and then we will have to put it to the vote. So whoever wishes to speak, you have to, after you've spoken, then that would end our discussion. We have Eddie Ju, Elizabeth Quad, Junius Ho, Liang Guohong, Fernando Zhang, and Kong Zhenyu. Junius Ho can go first. Thank you, Chairman. I've been listening very carefully, and it seems that they are worried about creating this post of a CSP for cybercrime will lead to some will lead to limits of freedoms and also lead to collusion with our mainland authorities. I think they are too sensitive in our daily life. The imminent threats, the crime, the cybercrime, I think they have taken it a bit too far. Just now, Mr. Eddie Ju asked the Undersecretary and said the national intelligence law has been drafted, and has he been negligent? Well, we are one country, 2 systems. It's happy if we would be happy if we were aware of it, but if we're not aware, it's not a big deal. If there are new requirements, does that mean that we're negligent if we're not aware about it? Let's see, when they have new laws in the mainland, well, that isn't in line with one country, 2 systems. So I'm interested that when the sovereignty power of Hong Kong was with the UK, I'd like to ask, in the past, the MI6, MI5, how did Hong Kong liaise with them? Or have we disposed of all the old records, old archives? We're now talking about the archive ordinance. So before 97, we would have had some of that information. How much intelligence do we report to the UK? You can tell us. So why do I ask that question? Is because they might be they might be digressing too much, and we can make reference to the old colonial days. And I don't think it might be that practical by asking this question, but I think we should stick to the present, and we should be dealing with imminent threats. The internet crime or cybercrime. There's no collusion or working with the mainland government to target Eddie Chu and that being investigated illegally. I think, and persecuting him, I think that would be digressing a bit too far. Chairman, I will not comment on the colonial days, and I also don't have the information. Well, if we don't have any further questions, we'll meet next with Miss Elizabeth Quad. You have 3 minutes. You can forego that opportunity if you wish. Well, I've been patient and listening. So as Chairman said just now, we started this discussion in June 2014. We've had 10 plus hours on, and today we still hear colleagues repeating the last week and the previous week's questions. It's just that we now have WannaCry and the National Intelligence Law, intelligence agencies, and so on. So, Chairman, I feel that we have been digressing. You've been very patient and allowed further questioning, and I see that the government officials are answering patiently. But we are moving further and further away from the creation of this post. And just I heard Siu Gachun ask whether it's just everyday crime being it's just transferring onto the internet, and they are just asking for more resources. I think that's unreasonable.
Over the years, we see that there is this international trend of tech crime numbers going up. So it's not just taking some crimes in the real world to the internet world. There are still crimes in the real world, and these are just new forms of crime on the internet. And that's why we need new resources, new international cooperation to tackle them. And for these tech crimes, they are a threat to our safety and also a threat to enterprises, in particular SMEs, and also the public. So it can't be said that these are problems created by the government themselves. This is a conspiracy theory which is going too far. So please don't mislead the public. Let's not procrastinate. Chairman, let's vote on it as soon as we can, so that we can create this post to lead the CSTCB, and it should gatekeep Hong Kong's security. So time's up for this session. Let's come back at 5:40.